Hey, it's Drybear, back again with another Diablo 4 build guide, and today we're going to be talking about my Crazed Barbarian build. This is primarily a one-handed dual-wield build that focuses on frenzy and double swing, as well as maximizing the effect of berserking. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you don't come hang out with me and the community, the next time you're going downstairs, you're going to think there's one more step, but there isn't. And you'll make that really awkward step at the end where you kind of lose your weight and balance, and everyone's going to look at you like you're really weird. Now, this build will focus on one-handed, and we actually get the most benefit from using one-handed axes in both hands, but there are benefits that we can use for our two-handed here. Now, keep in mind, at least for the launch, this build will probably not perform as well as the Whirlwind or the Bleed builds, but it's pretty close and super fun. So if you're someone who likes frenzy, you like very fast attack speed and dual wield, this build will fit in just for that. So we're going to focus on one-handed focus with frenzy stacks and using our double swing to get damage out of that. It can actually get some pretty serious single target damage, and then we have other options for kills as well. And I think it's one of the few builds that can fully maximize the benefit of using Death Blow in its build. So let's jump into it. Just like my other builds, I have fully built this in d4builds.gg. I have a link to the full build sheet down below in the description. Again, a lot of this is theory crafting, so there might be some things that will need to be shifted around, or there might be some comfort options that you may pick that feel better for you, that don't have a overall negative impact on damage output or survivability. So feel free to modify, but this is just a starting point for you to get into a berserk focused build. In this, I have a full gear sheet with gems and your passives for class on Barbarian, a full skill tree from the top to the bottom, all the way up to level 50 when you get your last skill point, and a first pass at a Paragon board that you can use for this build that focuses primarily on skill damage, attack speed, and berserking. But let's start where we always do, at the top of the skill tree, and work our way down and talk about the synergies, the combinations, and get you at least informed on how everything works so that you can kind of use the build in your own style if you choose to. The builder here is going to be Frenzy. This one is actually probably one of the most flexible builders in the Barbarian kit. You'll even see builds that don't even use dual wield at all use Frenzy because it's very easy for building up attack speed, and it also has bonuses that when you're berserking, you can gain global attack speed for all skills, which is valuable. But again, in this build, it fits perfectly. We're going to pick this up, and you can max it out for damage as well because you don't really need extra points for passives in this tree for this build specifically. So you're going to swing with both weapons, and you'll get a damage from each, and you'll get fury from each as well. And when it hits an enemy, you get increased attack speed that stacks up a few times. You can also get, when it's fully stacked up, you generate additional fury. And then again, when you're berserking, you gain attack speed or other abilities, not just frenzy, which is really cool. So this is your builder that you use to generate fury. Come down here to your spender, we're going to use double swing. I always loved frenzy and double swing builds in previous Diablos and other ARPGs that had something similar. Something about just standing still and going into the Kirito spam dual wield attack is always just really fun to watch. So we're going to pick up double swing here. You can actually get some pretty crazy scalars on double swing that makes it do a lot of damage. And if you have a fully complete build with proper defense, you can run legendaries like the one where when you're standing still for 3 seconds, you deal significantly more damage, which means you can start spamming. So this build really comes online towards the middle to end game when your build is a little bit more diverse and healthy. So we're gonna pick this up. We're gonna get the modifier so that if it damages a stunned or knocked down enemy, you gain fury. You also will pick this up where it grants double swing. So while casting, while you are using double swing while berserking, it grants additional berserking. So you have ways to proc berserking throughout this build, but then spending fury with double swing will extend your berserking. With this build, it should be very easy to have 100% perfect uptime on berserking at all times. There's even things in here that will very easily allow you to pick up berserking if you find a weird gap, you have to dodge some mechanic, you're taking too much damage, you have to walk away. You can re-enter into berserking very easily with this build, and that's the whole point, is you want to have berserking at all times. We also want to pick up pressure point. This gives us a chance to, when you're double swinging, you will have a chance to proc vulnerable on the target based on lucky hit, which is just your global proc chance. Super easy, it's a nice damage amp, and there's benefits that we get for hitting a vulnerable target. Coming down here to the GOAT, you're probably going to see Rallying Cry in almost every single Barbarian build. It's just that good. It's kind of like the Blood Howl of Barbarian. This one, when you activate it, it gives you movement speed and resource generation and applies to allies as well, which is huge. Super strong. We can modify it so that when it's active, at base it's 6 seconds. We can make it much longer than that. It gives you unstoppable for CC immunity. And then also, when you activate it, it instantly generates 20 fury and grants additional 20% resource generation on top of the 30% that you already have, which is, or the 40% that you already have. So even more on top of that, which is really cool. We don't really need any more defensives. There's options here if you wanted to run Iron Skin for defense, or if you wanted to run an extra shout for challenging shout. Most of the bar builds are going to run 2 or 3 shouts on launch just because it's so good. But I wanted to have a build that didn't, just for the sake of difference. So you can swap this out, but I think it's worth losing out on this one just for the sake of being able to do it. But this one has a great option where you can taunt enemies. It gives you a big amount of damage reduction, especially when you put points into it. You can also modify it so that when you take damage, you get fury. So if you're having trouble with fury generation, this could be a very easy way to get a bunch of fury. Coming down here to the next part of the tree, we're going to pick up Warcry, another excellent shout. You'll see this in a lot of Barbarian builds as well. It increases your damage dealt, nearby party members' damage dealt, and then we can modify it so that when you Warcry, you get Berserking. So this is the first way we have here. We can activate Warcry, get 4 seconds of Berserking. We activate it when we have full fury. We spend with double swing, and we grant ourselves extended Berserking over and over and over and over and over. So as long as we're double swinging, we can get Berserking. And then you can either get Fortify here, or you can get damage bonus increased. Either one is fine. If you feel like you need defense, I have this in here for that, just because we're not running Challenging Shout. But if you are running Challenging Shout, you probably want to run Power Warcry for the extra damage. Most bar builds are going to run Swiftness here. Movement speed is very good. If you can relinquish the points here, you can. There's some other options you can pick up down here at the bottom for the weapon mastery tree. But for now, it's just an easy pickup. And also, anytime you're running 1 or more shouts, consider this entire shout passive tree because it's so incredibly good. Booming Voice increases the duration of all shouts. In this build, when we're running 2 shouts, that's double value return on that. And you can also do it so that when you shout, it causes enemies to deal less damage. So if you stagger your shouts, you shout 5 seconds later and you do another shout, you can end up extending this damage reduction for most of the time, depending on your cooldown reduction. It is a berserking build. We're going to be able to berserk once our build is close to complete and complete. We'll be able to berserk all the time. And so we want to get these bonuses that we get while berserking, which are this purple color. Damage reduction while berserking, huge. While berserking, fury generation is increased by 18%, huge. One of the reasons why we can get away with not running the damage taken challenging shout bonus there. And when a brawling skill damages at least 1 enemy, you gain berserking. These are the brawling skills. You can actually cause Warcry to deal damage. This one you can swap out if you don't want to run with this, just to have this value here. Or if you want, you can run with leap or kick. They're both fine. And I've even seen a lot of builds run with charge as well. So what you could do is you could drop maybe Rallying Cry, or maybe even drop Death Blow and pick up like a charge, so that when you deal damage, you get a whole bunch of berserking, which is really easy. Some of these cooldowns are pretty short as well if you wanted to run with that. But if you don't want to, you can pull the points out of this just because you won't, at base, you won't be able to deal damage with Warcry. In order to get that proc, and you can find other points of defense here. You can even get single target bonuses here, or you can just come down, get Fury, and then get the healing that you get from Invigorating Fury, which is also very good. But you have options here for the Berserking tree to pick up there. Going down into the Weapon Mastery tree, we have a choice here, and I actually think this build works with Death Blow really, really well. So what you do with Death Blow is it's almost like the Darius skill. You attack forward, you do a bunch of damage to all enemies in front of you. If you kill an enemy, its cooldown is reset. And you can force this to use any weapon. Unlike Double Swing and your Frenzy, which have to use dual wield, you cannot force it to use something else. On Death Blow, you can have it use your two-hander, which means we can do a really cool combo, which we can, once you get the Grandfather Sword, you can force it to use two-handed slashing and give it really big damage bonus and big crit, which gives it a higher chance of killing the target, which is a higher chance of resetting as well. You can also make it do double damage to bosses, so very nice to build this up. It doesn't require any Fury. You can use this when you're low on Fury or when you're waiting for cooldowns. Build up your full Fury. When your Berserking's ending, you have all of your Berserking scalers. During Berserk, our damage scaling is out of control. Get 1 good Death Blow and you go back to rotating. Also, if Death Blow damages at least one enemy, which works on bosses, you gain Berserking. So if you're not going to run with Battle Fervor with a damaging brawling ability or a way to modify the Warcry to damage, then Death Blow is another way to proc Berserking on top of your Warcry and extending with your double swing. You also want to pick this up, Pit Fighter, anytime you're doing a melee build, which almost all the Barbarian builds are melee builds. You deal increased damage to close enemies and gain damage reduction against distant enemies. On some of the maps, the physical projectile damage dealers are insane, especially on the higher difficulties where they make the AI more aggressive and track you better and stick on you harder. I swear to God, the goats with the spears and the bowmen are insanely scary for barbarians. So getting this damage reduction on distant enemies does help alleviate some of that problem quite a bit. Coming down into the ultimate tree, it's a berserking build. So we're going to be picking up Wrath of the Berserker. This one, when you activate it, it knocks back enemies. Remember, we have modifiers up for when you deal damage to knocked back enemies or knocked down or stunned. You get some bonuses there. It gives you unstoppable for 5 seconds, and for 10 seconds, dealing direct damage grants berserking. So you have, while this is active, it gives you fat opportunities to berserk. You can berserk from Death Blow, you can berserk from Warcry, and then your double swing extends your berserk as well. But we can modify it so that while it's active, we gain movement speed and Fury generation. So that means when our frenzy is fully stacked up and we have all of our attack speed, we're swinging like madmen. Our Fury generation is incredibly strong. While Wrath of the Berserker is active, every 50 Fury increases the damage bonus of Berserk. We're in Berserk all the time. When we have Wrath of the Berserker, our Berserk scales even more. Super nice. We already talked about picking up this option here if you decide to not go for a brawling build there. Just get that maximum life for each Fury spent. And since we're a one-handed build, you will want the attack speed from Duelist. This just makes it so that when you're using one-handed weapons, you get the attack speed bonus. Much of what's over here won't affect you too much. You're not going to do like a Hammer of the Ancients overpower build. You're not going to be doing a crit two-handed build. You could actually run this just for Death Blow if you wanted to get rid of the defense here and just pick this up for Death Blow, which I think could work. I don't think you're going to spend too much time using bludgeoning with this, so none of those really apply to you in general. And for the last key passive, there's one clear choice, and that is the berserking option. Increase Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds. Because you have so many ways to apply berserking with Wrath of the Berserker, with your Death Blow, with a damaging brawler if you run it, with your Warcry, and you can extend it with your double swing, having the max duration of Berserk go up means all of those become more viable and more valuable because they're being able to add to that cap a little bit easier, and it increases its damage bonus by another 25%. So Berserk damage bonus goes up. You also can scale that again with Wrath of the Berserker while you're inside of it. The cooldown's pretty short. All of that works well together. So that is the skill tree for this build in general. Going to gear, for your special unique passive for Barbarian, it's Technique, which you specialize in using a specific kind of weapon. Personally, for me, the best one that I think is the best for this build is going to be One-Handed Axe. This gives you increased crit chance against injured enemies, which helps you kill bosses. Double this amount when using 2 axes. So we want a one-handed axe in each hand. And when you rank it up, you have a proc chance to make critical strikes, grant increased attack speed, and double it again when you're using 2 axes. So you get more crit chance and more attack speed, which helps this build a lot. It gives you more and more scaling. It's possible when you get to very, very end game that you might get some diminishing returns on attack speed, which means you can pull out things in the Paragon board or maybe even modifiers in your legendaries or in your skill tree where you don't need as much attack speed and you're better off getting some other stat. But as of right now, I think this kind of makes sense and goes into it. For Barbarian, remember that you can have up to 4 weapons equipped. The secret with this, though, is that if your weapon is not in your hand, you don't get the bonus. So the reason I like including all weapons in all Barbarian builds is you have options of what to look at for legendary effects that will work. Most of the time, you're going to spend your time in your 2 one-handed axes, so those make the most sense. And I think if you're running Death Blow, running Grandfather and force Death Blow to use two-handed slashing means you get really big Death Blow hits, which is super cool, and it's also a fun throwback to early Diablo 2 days, getting the Grandfather sword, so all of that makes a lot of sense. So let's look at the uniques first, because those are the ones that are going to be coming online late, but they are pretty defining. So let's look at what that is. We've already looked at the Grandfather sword. This increases your crit damage by double. So your crits are twice as strong when you have the Grandfather Sword equipped, and it has higher stats on it. So when you pull out your two-handed sword for death blow, you get higher stats, you get higher crit damage. That makes it very awesome. I also like Fists of Fate for this build. This is just a high uptime DPS modifier. What this does is that every attack that you do has a chance to deal extra damage. But when we have such incredible attack speed between Frenzy and Double Swing and all of our attack speed bonuses from one-handed, we are hitting so often that sometimes we'll get these just numbers popping up all over the place, right? You have a chance to proc this, which is, well, it's all random. But if you're hitting constantly, you're running that risk, you're running that proc opportunity so often that it actually starts to start procking pretty well. So this one's pretty fun to put into the build because then you just see number, and it does feel like you're just some demon slayer in multiple 17th form breathing, slicing everyone up. For your most important legendaries, which usually come from your jewelry and your weapons, there's a couple really big ones here. Accelerator Aspect makes a lot of sense. Crits with core skills increase your attack speed. So anytime you crit with Double Swing, which you will quite often with double axes, you'll get attack speed scales up. Again, be mindful that you might hit a breakpoint, but you probably won't in your first couple weeks of playing. Berserk Ripping is nice because while berserking and you deal damage, you have a chance to apply bleed. This one, you can actually get some nice damage modifiers out of it if you decide to run with the Paragon boards that focus on bleeding. But until you get this one online, you don't really have a reliable way to cause bleeding. So just kind of keep that one in mind. Bludgeoning, you can run, another weapon option is just getting Burning Rage. While berserking, you have Immolation Aura, fire damage that deals damage every second to surrounding enemies. It gives you more mobbing opportunity, which means you can focus on more single target damage, which is pretty cool. You'll have to find a spot to put it in, either trinkets, gloves, or in one of your 2 slots. You might be able to swap out accelerating if the Burning Rage scaling is actually really nice. For your rings and amulet, Berserk Fury is great. You gain Fury per second while berserking. Gives us more opportunity to spend on Double Swing, which is really cool. And of course, if you run with the skill tree bonus at the bottom, where as you spend Fury, you get maximum life. Super nice. Being able to get more Fury means you can spend more Fury, which means you can heal more often. Windlasher Aspect means that casting Double Swing twice within 1.5 seconds. There's a breakpoint for having enough attack speed to do this, but you'll be able to get that. It creates a Dust Devil that deals AoE damage, which is kind of free damage and helps you with mobbing. Your single target with this build is really good. Your mobbing can definitely stand to improve, but with Deathblow AoE and all these extra procs like Burning Rage and Windlasher, you actually get pretty decent AoE on top of everything else. Encroaching Wrath for your amulet means that after spending 100 Fury, your next weapon mastery skill deals double damage. Well, guess what? Your weapon mastery skill is Deathblow. So you add Deathblow, force it to use Grandfather, which is double crit damage. Allow it so that when you spend 100 Fury, your next Deathblow does double damage with double crit damage with all the other scaling that it has, and it does double damage to bosses. It means that when you get to a point where you have a break in the build, maybe you're low on Fury or you have a proc here, throw out the Deathblow with the 2-handed slashing, switch back to dual wield and start slamming away. But you can actually get Deathblow to scale up to ridiculous damage levels if you run all of these together. For boots, Berserker's Aspect, Relentless Berserker is pretty cool. It's a proc chance that when you damage an enemy with a core skill, Double Swing, you have a chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second, and double this duration if it was a crit. So if you crit with Double Swing, you get an increase to your berserking duration. Again, while you're slamming out with Double Swing, you get this. Again, you might hit a breakpoint where you don't need this one, but I think while leveling and while you're getting your Paragon maxed out, this one fits really well. Aspect of Might is decent as an option here. There's not too many crazy choices for legs in this. You can even run Temerity if you end up getting it, but this one just means that every time you Frenzy for the next 6 seconds, you'll be able to get some damage reduction, which helps. We already talked about Fists of Fate. Aspect of the Crowded Sage is nice. When you're standing in an area of enemies that are close to you, you are regenerating health. It helps with these builds. You can even run the legendary that makes it when you stand still for up to 3 seconds, you get increased damage. I think it works great for Frenzy and Double Swing where you're just standing there swinging away. And then you can also make it so that when you take or when you deal damage, you stack up increased armor. And what's great about Disobedience with this build is you hit so frequently with all of your abilities, especially if you're running Burning Rage, that you actually, if this buff of armor drops, you can fill it up so fast, like incredibly fast. Get all the way back up to full armor bonus very, very easily. So that is the gear. We talked about the skill tree. And lastly, I'll leave you with a first pass at a Paragon board. This there's definitely going to be a lot of variation and more theory crafting required to make these Paragon boards work. And I think also many people have many approaches to Paragon boards on how they want to build theirs and what works for their ability. You'll really just want to create your Paragon board based on what you feel you need, right? If you feel like you are not as good at avoiding damage, maybe you need more defense, maybe you need more damage because you're not killing fast enough, or maybe you do more damage in berserking, or maybe you struggle to keep berserking up until you get the full build online. All of that can be modified based on what you're looking for. That being said, I wanted to make sure that you guys had a Paragon board that has good synergy, that fits the build and works, so that if you get to level 50, you unlock Paragon and you just want to keep playing, you don't want to think about Paragon, you have an option here to just follow this, and this one works pretty good for the build. It fits the build really well, and there's good synergy here. There's going to be optimizations to be made and changes to be made as we learn more, but this is a good starting point for you. So let's run through it real quick as a starting point. Stats are different for every class. There's a base amount of stat value for all classes, but then depending on what class you are, the stats, the 4 basic stats, do something different. For Barbarian, strength gives you skill damage, dexterity gives you crit, willpower gives you resource generation. You don't really need a lot of willpower here once you have your double shouts and everything working. It might be useful while leveling up to 100 to get this, but in general, you don't care as much. Your best stats are going to be strength and dexterity. The crit chance scales really well with this build, especially if you run Death Blow, and strength for skill damage just makes all of your damage go up. So as we're moving through the board, we're going to prefer getting strength or dexterity whenever possible. We're going to come up here and get physical damage and life. I like this one because it's a triple strength node going to the right and going up. You can also get defense here. Percent life is always really good, so we like that, and more armor is good as well. Pick up all these nodes here for more physical damage, and then for glyph, I recommend ire in this spot. For every 5 strength purchased within range, you deal increased damage while berserking. We're berserking all the time, so it's free damage. And if you get 40 strength in range, which there is, you can get 10% reduced damage from elites. This one doesn't have a crazy amount of strength for that option, but as long as you can hit the passive, it works. So you could probably move ire to a different glyph spot if you wanted to, but that is a decent spot for it. Coming up here, you want to get damage while berserking. Your best board for this build is going to be the Carnage board. This one is your berserking board, and it is the one you want to spend the most amount of points on. It's very, very good. So we come up here from below, because down below is damage while berserking. We like that. Coming up to the glyph spot, I like running ambidextrous here. We get increased damage while wielding one-handed weapons. Most of the time, outside of just death blow, we're going to be using one-handed anyways, and we can modify the blue nodes in here, which increase our damage done while berserking. Really nice, and we get enough dexterity to proc the second passive here on the yellow, plus more defense and damage reduction, which is really good. The key passive, or the legendary node for this, is while berserking, crit strikes increase your attack speed up to 8%. Super cool. We get a lot of those. Again, why dexterity can be super valuable for us. We like that. We can also get damage while berserking on this, and percent damage to elites as well. You can probably move some things around and try to get damage while berserking for the willpower requirement, because we're quite close here, but just something to keep in mind. You can also put Blood Rage in here. I like kind of dipping my toe into Blood Rage, because on the left side of the Blood Rage board, there is damage while berserking. Hey, easy pickup. Duration of berserking is also really nice. That just keeps it so it's a lot easier to maintain your uptime on berserking. Coming in from below, I like going to Flawless Technique for this, because we can actually come up here, we can get damage reduction from close enemies, and then we can also get crit strike damage with one-handed weapons. Nice. That's a big pickup for us. You can also run Cleaver as a glyph. You get increased damage while wielding an axe, and we're going to do that. And while wielding an axe, you deal increased crit strike damage. We have crazy crit strike chance. We have crazy crit damage scaling. All of that increases our damage quite significantly. We're going to come up here and pick up physical damage and crit damage again as we move through here. We come down here and pick up the legendary, which is damaging enemies with one-handed weapons for most of your abilities. Increases your crit chance by 1% for 2 seconds, stacking up to 5%. Very, 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 very cool. So as you're spamming between Frenzy and Double Swing, you're getting crit chance. And we also have tons of crit damage in this build, which makes that even more viable. There's some defense here if you need to for cold resistance and percent life. And over here is damage with one-handed weapons, which affects your 2 primary abilities. Awesome, we like that. Then from the right side, I like coming into Weapons Master, which is really cool. There's a glyph spot here that we're not going to fully max out with the points that we have, but it does give us benefit. And it also has a node set on the left side, which is physical damage and attack speed. That helps us give us a basic set of attack speed to build things up. And there's also, if you decide to go for like a crazy strength build, you can proc a bonus for physical damage there as well. Come up here, we can grab Wrath, which is a pretty easy glyph to activate. All we need to do is get 25 dexterity to get crits that generate extra fury. And for each dexterity that we have in range, core skills deal increased crit damage, which is our double swing. And you can come up here and you can get physical damage as well. Just make sure that you get 25 dexterity through these. And it's nice that there are dex nodes here as well. So that is the first pass at a Paragon board to get you started in these berserking barbarian build. If you liked the video or found value in it, leave me a like down below, leave a comment. It helps me out tremendously, helps the video get seen by more people, and come hang out with me on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.